Well, the racing season is fully underway now with the Rolex 24 at Daytona last weekend, IndyCar getting into preseason testing, Formula One liveries being revealed starting yesterday. Well, actually on the 31st with the Haas MoneyGram livery reveal. Of course, these are not the race cars we'll see testing in Bahrain and race throughout the Formula One season, but that's a whole different story. And who better to talk about it with than a guy who has had a taste of all of those series and a whole lot more, Pietro Fittipaldi, third generation racer. Pietro, thanks for taking the time to join me.
Thank you for the invite, Bob. I really appreciate it. Happy to be here. It's always a pleasure to speak to you guys.
So where are you calling in from, may I ask?
So I'm in North Carolina now, in Davidson. I just got back from the Daytona 24 hours, and my parents live over here. So came back to North Carolina, and I'll be going to the UK on Sunday to be there with Haas next week.
Okay, I got to start with a really stupid question. In my experience of being around these guys, I know Nico Rosberg, and forgive me if my picture breaks up, Nico Rosberg was born in Germany, does not speak his father, Keke Rosberg's native Finnish. Tom Blomqvist, who sat on pole for the Rolex 24, in which you participated, does not speak Swedish like his famous father, Stig Blomqvist. My question for you is, you're born in Miami. Do you speak Portuguese?
Yes, I speak Portuguese fluently and Spanish as well, and a little bit of Italian.
Bueno, a Renaissance man. Okay, let's get right into the Haas thing. Congratulations on re-signing as the test and reserve driver for the newly renamed MoneyGram Haas Formula One team. What do you think of that new livery?
Well, I really like it. I want to see it in person. It always looks a little bit different in person. So I know we have a shakedown at some point next week, which I'll be attending. So it'll be interesting to see how the car looks in person. I'm not sure that they'll be releasing any images yet of the car after the shakedown. I know it'll be kind of like a filming day, but to be released later on, maybe in the end of February or March. But yeah, I think the car looks very nice, looks super aggressive. And let's hope it's fast on track as well.
I'm not sure if this is a question you can answer, but in your opinion, what does that new MoneyGram sponsorship mean to this team? Is it a significant boost?
Oh, definitely, yes. So I know, we were always struggling to get to that budget cap, even when they lowered the, when they put a budget cap into the Formula One system, but we were always struggling to hit it. And now I think with this sponsorship, we are at the budget cap. So that's what I believe. So running, at maximum capacity, and still not the same as being like a manufacturer team, for example. I think obviously the manufacturers who produce their own powertrains and stuff, they definitely have more resources, but this MoneyGram title sponsorship is extremely important, and it gives a team, that funding that they need to be able to continue developing the car throughout the season and preparing for the upcoming seasons as well.
For those who don't understand, in this era of so little on-track testing in Formula One, what do the duties of a test and reserve driver entail? What are you responsible for? So
for sure, I need to be ready at every race weekend to make sure if something happens, I jump in the car and I'm performing at my best. That happened in 2020 when Roman had his accident, and I had to jump in for 2 F1 races. And I'm testing the car throughout the year, helping with the development of the car, providing my inputs. Last test I did with the car was this past December. We did the postseason testing, and we're testing the 2023 tires already, and just providing my feedback for the team. That's always important, and then doing a lot of simulator work, because there's not a lot of testing days throughout the year. You might get, maybe 7 to 8 test days throughout the whole year that you have to share between your 2 race drivers and your reserve driver. It's like 8 days split between 3 guys. It's not a lot of time. So a lot of the development work is done on simulation programs with or without the drivers. I know engineers have simulation programs where they simulate setups for each individual track, but they can do it without a driver, and as well do simulation work with a driver behind the wheel. And that's a lot of what we do.
And you do all of this in the context of a pretty busy schedule, racing other stuff. Are you planning to do more sports cars? And by the way, congratulations on that 6th in class at the Rolex, 12th overall in the LMP2. Nice job. Are you going to be doing more sports cars?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna be racing full time the IMSA championship in the LMP2 class. Our next race is at Sebring, and I'll also be racing the World Endurance Championship as well in the LMP2 car. And coincidentally, our next race is also Sebring. So Sebring in March we'll be having a double header. I'll be racing Friday the World Endurance Championship. It'll be a 10-hour race. And then I sleep it off, and Saturday I'm back in the car and racing IMSA for a 12-hour race. So I've never done that before. That's going to be pretty interesting. And like jumping from one car to the other in between practices and qualifying and stuff, it's going to be I'm going to have to make sure I plan it extremely well. But I'm super happy to be doing sports car racing. I really love it. And I've been doing, very well with it starting last year. And then now, racing with Team Joda, who are the current champions, and as well Rickware Racing, who the goal is to win the IMSA championship this year. We were looking good at Daytona, possibly fighting for a podium finish, but a couple hours to go, our brakes exploded and we lost a couple laps. We were able to recover, but I think we had a shot to be fighting for the podium there at the end of Daytona.
Welcome to endurance racing. Before we leave Haas, you mentioned Romain Grosjean's crash that forced you into the seat for 2 races. Were you in Bahrain when he went through the fence and exploded in flames and a legend was born?
Yes, I was in Bahrain. We're all, watching at the garage, and obviously when the crash happened, when a Formula One car explodes, the impact has to be massive. So we knew it wasn't. It was a scary crash. We knew it was a massive impact just to be able to break the Formula One fuel cell and to cause that explosion. And we didn't know how he was at the time. But when we saw him get out of the car and, them getting him, the marshals being able to get him out of the car, the medical team pulling him out of the car and him running to the ambulance, we knew that he was well. But obviously in crashes like that, when you're having to breathe in so much smoke and there's fire and stuff, you never know what the after effects are. And that's always really scary because you might be able to get out of the car, everything's fine, but you were breathing smoke for the past 40 minutes or 40 seconds, sorry, 40 minutes. And that really hurts your lungs and everything. But luckily he was fine with that. Obviously he had a burn in his hand, which was very severe. Actually, I saw him at Daytona, and Gunther came to see us as well. By coincidence at Daytona, where our garage was, it was my garage. To the left of me, literally to the left, it was Romain Grosjean in his Lamborghini. And to the right of me was Esteban Gutierrez in the other LMP2 car. So it was the 3 Haas drivers at Daytona, one garage, like one next to each other. And then Gunther came to see us, and we had a chat, me, Gunther, and Roman. But yeah, when he had his accident there, it was definitely a scary time for the whole team.
Gunther, of course, is Gunther Steiner, who's the team principal at MoneyGram Haas. What did it do to your head, if I can be so blunt, when you watched that crash and then the team said, okay, you're in next week? I mean, the race was the following weekend. What were you thinking when you saw the potential that was made obvious by Grosjean's crash?
Obviously, the call came in on Monday morning. I woke up and Gunther sent me a message asking me to come to the track, and I wasn't sure what it was about. I had an idea, maybe I had something to do with Roman, or maybe I did something wrong that he wasn't happy about, but I wasn't sure. So I arrived at the track, arrived at the team hospitality, and Gunther was sitting there next to Stuart Morrison, who I think you might know is the team PR. Head of communications at Haas, and they had some papers in front of them, and I was like, Jesus, I must have done something really bad or something like that. But when we sat down, Gunther, looked at me and he said, Pietro, are you ready? And I said, for sure, I'm ready. And he said, no, Pietro, you have to say you're fucking born ready. And I said, okay, Gunther, I'm fucking born ready. And he said, great, you're going to be racing this weekend for us. So your first Formula One GP, you have to sign these papers here and you're in the car. So that was the Monday following the accident. And Gunther told me, he had gone to the hospital to see Roman. They weren't allowing many people to go, but Gunther was able to go there, and he asked, he let Roman know that he was going to put me in the car, and Roman was very happy about that and super supportive. And yeah, and then I did my first Formula One GP there at the Bahrain GP, or the Sakir GP as they call it. And then my second Formula One race was the following weekend in Abu Dhabi.
That's a pretty amazing story in itself, and not often talked about after that spectacular crash. Oh, and by the way, I understand you and Enzo have a YouTube channel. You're over 100,000 subscribers. I'll have to make it 100,001. How's that project going?
Yeah, it's going really well. We're super active on the digital side, me and Enzo with the Fittipaldi Brothers brand. We're super active on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. When quarantine started back in 2020, we started streaming the virtual Formula One races that Formula One was doing, because there was no real life races. They started doing these virtual F1 races, and the teams were having to participate, all the F1 teams, and Haas invited me and my brother to race for the Haas F1 team in this official F1 virtual championship. And we ended up winning the constructors and drivers championship for Haas. And we were streaming all our races on Twitch through our Fittipaldi Brothers channel, and it ended up growing a lot. And we continue to stream, every month we probably stream around 40 to 50 hours a month. And on YouTube, we're probably posting around 10 videos a month, and on TikTok as well. So we love producing content and putting it out there, all motorsport based, and happy that we've been able to grow such a following. It's been super helpful as well to create activations with our sponsors and stuff, which is always important. It's you rely on the sponsors at the end of the day to race, so it's important to be able to create that platform and being able to use it to benefit our racing programs.
Well, you're certainly not short of content over the years. I mean, looks back, you mentioned you raced stock cars in North Carolina. You were the track champion at Hickory Speedway there in Tar Heel country. You also raced stock cars in Brazil. You did open wheel in Formula 4. You've done all the way up to Indy cars for Dale Coyne. We know about your Formula One experience with Haas. You've been to Le Mans in the sports cars. What does it mean to you to be the kind of all-rounder that your father and Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt and all the really legendary names were in their own time?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been able to adapt very quickly to new cars, and I think I'm one of the drivers who's driven the most cars over the past few years, because I've driven everywhere really. I mean, Formula One, DTM, NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula E, Super Formula, Brazilian stock car, GTs, prototype cars, LMP2, LMP1. So I've driven so many different cars and at a super competitive level. So I've always been able to adapt very quickly to new cars, new environments, and I think that helps me a lot when new opportunities come my way and you don't have a lot of time to be able to show what you can do and time to adapt. I've always been able to adapt super quick and perform on the spot. So, it's, I think that's super important for me. And whether it's Formula One or sports car racing or IndyCar, I want to establish myself in a series and be able to do it long term, and be able to win races and championships.
Let's talk about the Formula One cars. Of course, they were new from the ground up last year. You spent time in them. They'll be refined, but not a revolution this year. How would you compare driving the 2022-23 version of a Formula One car compared with the one that came before?
They're more difficult to drive, these new generation Formula One cars. They're heavier, the tires are heavier, the wheels are heavier. Everything in general with the car, it's heavier and stiffer. So you just you feel like you have to hustle the car a lot more. When, the car slides or understeers, everything happens a little bit slower. So when you go correct the car, it's much slower motions. The previous generation car, it felt a lot more stuck to the ground. It felt lighter and it felt faster, to be honest. It was more enjoyable to drive. But the good thing about these new cars is the drivers are more prone to making mistakes. So in the race, you can see some, maybe unpredictable things happen, with drivers locking up, losing the rear of the car in the middle of the high-speed corner. So the drivers are more prone to making mistakes. And as well, you're able to follow closer with these cars. They're less wing aero dependent, much more dependent on the floor to create the downforce. So you're able to follow cars a lot closer, and that in general makes the racing better.
One of our listeners, Drew, has submitted a two-part question. One part is, will you race at Sebring? And you've already told us yes, both in the 10-hour World Endurance Race and the 12-hour WeatherTech Series race. Good luck to you with that. His other question, though, is what kind of overlap, if any, is there between the technical teams in Formula One and NASCAR?
You mean with Haas or is
with
that
Haas? Yes.
No, I think that there isn't much of overlap because they're so different, the cars, and the regulations are so different. And the Haas team, they have an office here next to where I live in Kannapolis, where they have the NASCAR shop and then the Formula One shop. But I'd say most of the engineers and most of the mechanics, they're all based either in the UK or in Italy for Haas. So here in the Haas F1 shop here, it's more like an administrative office. But I think it's difficult for, the F1 engineers to have like an overlap with the NASCAR engineers, just because it's so different, it's two different series. And once the season starts, for example, it's even hard for those guys to communicate because they're so busy. I mean, it's nonstop, both in NASCAR and in Formula One.
Okay, I know you got to go, but I have one final question. What are your thoughts on Michael Andretti's effort to start a Formula One team from scratch?
I think it's great. I would love to see, Andretti and another team in Formula One. As a driver, when you have another team in Formula One, it's another opportunity to be able to race in Formula One. You open more doors. You go from 20 cars to 22 cars, and it's more chance for young drivers to make it into F1. And personally, I think it would be great if they were able to do it, to be able to race in Formula One and have a team in F1. Obviously, I think some of the teams, have concerns of, and I see what the teams are saying. They have concerns and kind of making sure that every new entry that comes in will provide, benefits for all the teams that have been there for many years. So I see how, some teams are a bit cautious and stuff with new entrants trying to come in, but I'm sure I think Andretti would be a great addition.
All right. It's been great talking with you, Pietro. I know you have to get to a team meeting. I really appreciate you taking the time. Good luck this season and into the future. We'll see you at Sebring.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Thank you, Bob.
Cheers.
See you.